Question 1. All of the following are typically considered supplementary payments under a personal auto policy Part A, liability, except A. Costs of a bail bond required because of an accident. B. Loss of earnings due to the insured's attendance at trials. C. Expenses incurred by the insured for immediate medical care at the scene of an accident. D. Premiums on appeal bonds and bonds to release attachments. Answer: C. Expenses incurred by the insured for immediate medical care at the scene of an accident. Supplementary payments in a personal auto policy's liability section cover additional expenses related to a covered liability claim, such as bail bonds, appeal bonds, and loss of earnings from attending hearings. However, expenses for immediate medical care for the insured at the scene of an accident fall under Part B, medical payments coverage, not Part A, liability. Part A covers the insured's legal liability to others, while Part B is for medical expenses regardless of fault. Remember that supplementary payments enhance the liability coverage by assisting with legal and administrative costs. Question 2. Which of the following HO forms provides broad perils coverage for the dwelling and personal property? A. HO 3. B. HO 4. C. HO 5. D. HO 2. Answer: D. HO 2. The HO 2, known as the broad form, provides named perils coverage for both the dwelling, coverage A, and personal property, coverage C. This means it covers losses only from the specific perils listed in the policy, such as fire, lightning, windstorm, hail, and certain others like falling objects or sudden discharge of water. While other forms might offer broader dwelling coverage, the HO 2 explicitly covers both dwelling and personal property on a named perils basis. To easily remember, think of HO 2 as a broad list of perils for everything covered. Question 3. Under a standard personal auto policy, PAP, what type of coverage would pay for damages to the insured's own vehicle if it is hit by a falling tree branch? A. Collision coverage. B. Other than collision, comprehensive coverage. C. Uninsured motorist property damage coverage. D. Bodily injury liability coverage. Answer: B. Other than collision, comprehensive coverage. Damages to an insured's vehicle caused by events other than colliding with another object or overturning are covered under other than collision, often called comprehensive coverage. A falling tree branch is an example of such a peril, as it is a non-collision event. Collision coverage would apply if the car hit another vehicle or an object, or if it overturned. Think of other than collision as covering random, non-moving vehicle incidents, like hitting an animal or damage from weather. Question 4. An insured's home has a replacement cost of $300,000. To avoid a coinsurance penalty, what is the minimum amount of insurance the homeowner should carry if the policy has an 80% coinsurance clause? A. $200,000. B. $240,000. C. $300,000. D. $320,000. Answer: B. $240,000. To avoid a coinsurance penalty, an insured must carry coverage equal to or greater than the coinsurance percentage multiplied by the replacement cost of the property. In this case, with an 80% coinsurance clause and a $300,000 replacement cost, the minimum coverage required is $300,000 x 0.80 equals $240,000. If less than this amount is carried, the insurer will only pay a partial amount of a loss, even if the loss is less than the policy limit. Always multiply the replacement cost by the coinsurance percentage to find the minimum coverage needed. Question 5. Which of the following perils is typically not covered under a standard HO 3 special form policy? A. Fire. B. Theft. C. Earthquake. D. Vandalism. Answer, C. Earthquake. While an HO3 special form policy provides open perils coverage for the dwelling and other structures, meaning it covers all perils unless specifically excluded, certain major catastrophic perils are always excluded. Earthquake is a standard exclusion found in all homeowners forms due to its widespread and unpredictable damage potential. Fire, theft, and vandalism are generally covered perils, even under more basic forms, or are certainly included under the open perils coverage of an HO3. Remember that significant natural disasters like earthquakes and floods typically require separate, specialized policies or endorsements. Question 6. The section of a personal auto policy that describes the agreement between the insured and the insurer, including the policy period and territory, is called the A. Insuring agreement. B. Conditions. C. Declarations page. D. Exclusions. Answer, C. Declarations page. The declarations page is the front page of an insurance policy and provides a summary of the most important information. It includes the named insured, policy period, premium, coverages, limits, deductibles, and the description of the insured vehicle. The insuring agreement outlines the insurer's promise to pay, while conditions specify the duties of both parties. Think of the declarations page as the snapshot of your specific policy details. Question 7. Under a personal auto policy, Part C, uninsured motorists coverage applies to A. Property damage to the insured's vehicle caused by a collision with an at-fault driver who has no insurance. B. Bodily injury to an insured caused by an at-fault driver who has no insurance. C. Medical expenses for the insured after an accident, regardless of fault. D. Legal defense costs for the insured when sued by another party. Answer, B. Bodily injury to an insured caused by an at-fault driver who has no insurance. Uninsured motorists, UM, coverage primarily protects the insured and their passengers for bodily injury damages when they are involved in an accident with an at-fault driver who does not carry liability insurance. While some states offer uninsured motorist property damage, UMPD, the core coverage universally applies to bodily injury. Medical expenses regardless of fault fall under medical payments, Part B, and legal defense costs are part of liability, Part A. Remember that acts as if the at-fault uninsured driver had liability insurance for your bodily injuries. Question 8. The purpose of coverage F, medical payments to others, in a homeowner's policy is to A. Pay for medical expenses of the insured family members injured on the insured premises. B. Cover medical expenses for injuries to guests or others accidentally injured on the insured's property, regardless of fault. C. Provide coverage for the insured's pet's veterinary bills if the pet causes an injury. D. Reimburse the insured for lost wages due to an injury sustained on the property. Answer, B. Cover medical expenses for injuries to guests or others accidentally injured on the insured's property, regardless of fault. Coverage F, medical payments to others, is a no-fault coverage that pays for necessary medical expenses incurred by a person who is injured while on the insured location, or by the activities of an insured off the premises, up to the policy limit, regardless of legal liability. This coverage is designed to quickly resolve smaller medical claims without determining fault, helping to prevent potential liability lawsuits. It's crucial to distinguish this from coverage E, personal liability, which requires fault, and from the insured's own medical expenses, which are not covered here. Question 9. An insured's dwelling is covered for $200,000 under an HO3 policy. What is the typical automatic coverage amount for coverage B, other structures? A. 10% of coverage A. B. 20% of coverage A. C. $20,000. D. $40,000. Answer, A. 10% of coverage A. Under most standard homeowners policies, including the HO3, coverage B, other structures, is automatically set at 10% of the coverage A, dwelling, limit. Therefore, if the dwelling is insured for $200,000, coverage B would typically be $20,000, 10% of $200,000. This covers detached structures like garages, sheds, or fences on the insured premises. While the insured can purchase higher limits for coverage B, 10% is the standard starting point. Question 10. The concept that states the insured cannot collect more than the actual amount of the loss, regardless of the policy limit, is known as A. Indemnity. B. Subrogation. C. Actual cash value. D. Coinsurance. Answer: A. Indemnity. Indemnity is a fundamental principle in insurance that means the insured is restored to their approximate financial condition before the loss, no better and no worse. This principle ensures that insurance is not a source of profit, preventing moral hazard. Subrogation is the insurer's right to recover from a third party, and actual cash value is a method of valuation. Always remember that the goal of insurance is to make you whole again, not to provide a windfall. Question 11. Which of the following is typically covered under a standard personal auto policy's Part D, coverage for damage to your auto? A. Wear and tear. B. Freezing. C. Road damage to tires. D. Damage to a permanently installed custom sound system. Answer: D. Damage to a permanently installed custom sound system. Part D, coverage for damage to your auto, covers direct and accidental loss to your covered auto and its equipment. While standard exclusions include wear and tear, freezing, and road damage to tires, permanently installed custom sound systems are typically covered, often up to a specified limit or with the purchase of an endorsement for higher values. This reflects that accessories which become a permanent part of the vehicle are generally considered equipment. Always check your policy for specific limits on custom equipment. Question 12. A tenant who rents an apartment would typically purchase which type of homeowner's policy form to cover their personal property? A. HO2. B. HO3. C. HO4. D. HO6. Answer: C. HO4. The HO4, known as the Contents Broad Form or Renter's Insurance, is specifically designed for tenants who do not own the dwelling they occupy. This policy provides coverage for personal property against broad-named perils and also includes personal liability coverage. The landlord's policy covers the building itself, so the tenant only needs coverage for their belongings and liability. Remember, HO4 is for renters, simplifying who it protects. Question 13. The standard deductible for fire and extended coverage perils on a homeowner's policy is typically applied. A. Per occurrence. B. Annually, regardless of the number of losses. C. Per item damaged. D. As a percentage of the dwelling limit. Answer: A. Per occurrence. For most standard homeowners policies, including those covering fire and extended perils like windstorm or hail, the deductible applies per occurrence. This means that for each separate incident causing damage, the insured must pay the deductible amount before the insurer pays the remainder of the covered loss. Some perils, like hurricane or wind, might have a separate percentage deductible, but the general rule for most perils is a per occurrence flat dollar deductible. Question 14. An insured's detached garage is damaged by a fire. Which part of their homeowner's policy would cover this damage? A. Coverage A. Dwelling. B. Coverage B. Other structures. C. Coverage C. Personal property. D. Coverage D. Loss of use. Answer: B. Coverage B. Other structures. Coverage B, titled Other Structures, provides coverage for structures on the insured's premises that are separated from the dwelling by a clear space. A detached garage perfectly fits this definition. Coverage A covers the main dwelling, Coverage C covers personal belongings, and Coverage D covers additional living expenses if the home becomes uninhabitable. This distinction helps categorize and appropriately apply coverage based on the specific property damaged. Question 15. In an auto policy, what is the primary difference between split limits and single limits for liability coverage? A. Split limits cover property damage only, while single limits cover bodily injury only. B. Split limits specify separate amounts for bodily injury per person, per accident, and for property damage, while single limits have one combined amount for all damages. C. Split limits apply to collision coverage, while single limits apply to comprehensive coverage. D. Split limits are for commercial vehicles, while single limits are for personal vehicles. Answer: B. Split limits specify separate amounts for bodily injury per person, per accident, and for property damage, while single limits have one combined amount for all damages. Split limits are represented as three separate numbers, e.g., 25/50/25, where the first number is the maximum bodily injury per person, the second is the maximum bodily injury per accident, and the third is the maximum property damage per accident. Single limits, conversely, provide one aggregate amount that applies to all bodily injury and property damage arising from a single accident, regardless of how many people are injured or how much property is damaged. Understanding this difference is key to knowing the maximum payout for a liability claim. Question 16. What is the standard duration of coverage for additional living expense, ALE, under Coverage D, loss of use, in a homeowner's policy? A. 30 days. B. Until the dwelling is repaired or the insured permanently relocates. C. Up to 6 months. D. Only if the dwelling is completely destroyed. Answer: B. Until the dwelling is repaired or the insured permanently relocates. Coverage D, loss of use, which includes additional living expense, ALE, typically covers the necessary increase in living expenses incurred by the insured to maintain their normal standard of living when their dwelling becomes uninhabitable due to a covered loss. This coverage usually continues for the shortest time required to repair or replace the dwelling, or for the insured to permanently relocate, up to the policy's limits. It's not limited to a fixed number of days but rather the reasonable time needed for recovery. Question 17. The purpose of an assigned risk plan, or automobile insurance plan, is to A. Provide discounted auto insurance rates for good drivers. B. Offer liability coverage to high-risk drivers who cannot obtain insurance in the voluntary market. C. Facilitate competitive pricing among standard auto insurers. D. Assign drivers with multiple violations to specific insurance companies for punitive measures. Answer: B. Offer liability coverage to high-risk drivers who cannot obtain insurance in the voluntary market. Assigned risk plans, or automobile insurance plans, are state-regulated mechanisms designed to ensure that high-risk drivers, who are unable to obtain auto liability insurance through standard or preferred insurers, can still secure the legally required minimum coverage. These plans distribute such risks among all licensed insurers in a state, ensuring that no driver is left without access to essential coverage. They serve as a last resort, not a way to get discounts. Question 18. Under a homeowner's policy, Coverage C, personal property, is typically covered on what basis when away from the insured premises? A. 10% of the Coverage C limit, worldwide. B. 20% of the Coverage C limit, worldwide. C. Full Coverage C limit, but only within the same state. D. Only if specifically scheduled. Answer: A. 10% of the Coverage C limit, worldwide. Most homeowners' policies provide coverage for personal property anywhere in the world, but with a sublimit for property away from the insured premises. This sublimit is commonly 10% of the coverage C limit. So, if you take your belongings on vacation, they are still covered, albeit usually at a reduced amount. This is an important consideration for travelers or students living away from home. Question 19. Which of the following is true regarding deductible application for collision and other than collision, comprehensive, coverages in a personal auto policy? A. Deductibles only apply to collision coverage. B. A deductible applies separately to each coverage, collision and comprehensive. C. Deductibles are waived if the insured is not at fault. D. Deductibles apply to bodily injury claims only. Answer: B. A deductible applies separately to each coverage, collision and comprehensive. When an insured chooses to purchase both collision and other than collision, comprehensive, coverages, a separate deductible typically applies to each coverage. For example, you might have a $500 collision deductible and a $250 comprehensive deductible. This means that if damage occurs due to a collision, you pay the collision deductible, and if it's due to comprehensive peril, you pay the comprehensive deductible. Deductibles reduce the amount the insurer pays and apply to physical damage to your vehicle, not bodily injury claims. Question 20. The standard HO3 special form policy covers personal property on what basis? A. Open perils. B. Broad named perils. C. Basic named perils. D. Actual cash value only. Answer: B. Broad named perils. While the HO3 policy provides open perils, all risks, unless excluded, coverage for the dwelling and other structures, it provides broad named perils coverage for personal property, coverage C. This means personal property is only covered for the specific list of perils outlined in the broad form, similar to what is found in an HO2 policy. It's crucial to distinguish between the dwelling's open perils and the personal property's named perils coverage under an HO3. Question 21. If an insured's vehicle is stolen, which part of their personal auto policy would cover the cost of a rental car while their vehicle is missing? A. Part A, liability. B. Part D, coverage for damage to your auto. C. Towing and labor costs endorsement. D. Transportation expenses, included in Part D or as an endorsement. Answer: D. Transportation expenses, included in Part D or as an endorsement. While Part D covers the direct damage due to theft, the specific coverage for a rental car after a vehicle is stolen is typically provided under transportation expenses within Part D, or as a separate endorsement. This coverage usually has a waiting period, e.g., 48 hours after theft, before rental car costs are covered, and often has a daily limit. This helps the insured maintain mobility while their vehicle is gone. Question 22. Under a homeowner's policy, coverage E, personal liability, provides coverage for A. Damages to the insured's own property caused by their negligence. B. Medical expenses for the insured or their family members. C. Bodily injury and property damage for which the insured is legally responsible. D. Damage to property owned by the insured and used by a tenant. Answer: C. Bodily injury and property damage for which the insured is legally responsible. Coverage E, personal liability, is designed to protect the insured for sums they become legally obligated to pay due to bodily injury or property damage to others arising from their negligence or the condition of their premises. This is a crucial aspect of homeowners insurance, covering situations like a guest slipping on a wet floor or the insured's dog biting someone. It does not cover the insured's own property or medical expenses. Question 23. An insured's car suffers damage in an accident where they were 100% at fault. Which coverage would pay for the repairs to their own car? A. Collision coverage. B. Other than collision, comprehensive, coverage. C. property damage liability coverage. D. Uninsured motorist property damage coverage. Answer: A. Collision coverage. Collision coverage in a personal auto policy pays for damages to the insured's own vehicle resulting from a collision with another object, like another car, a tree, or a pole, or from the vehicle overturning, regardless of who is at fault. Since the insured was at fault for the accident, this specific coverage is triggered for the damage to their own vehicle. Property damage liability would pay for damage to the other party's car. Question 24. What is the primary difference between a homeowner's policy, HO, and a dwelling policy, DP? A. Homeowners' policies cover personal property, while dwelling policies do not. B. Homeowners' policies cover owner-occupied residences, while dwelling policies often cover rental properties or homes under construction. C. Homeowners' policies include liability coverage, while dwelling policies do not. D. Homeowners' policies cover more perils than dwelling policies. Answer: B. Homeowners' policies cover owner-occupied residences, while dwelling policies often cover rental properties or homes under construction. The most significant distinction is the occupancy requirement. Homeowners (HO) policies are designed for owner-occupied dwellings, meaning the insured lives there. Dwelling (DP) policies are typically used for dwellings that are not owner-occupied, such as rental properties, vacation homes, or properties under construction, and offer more limited coverage options. While DPs can include personal property and liability, their primary purpose and eligibility differ. Question 25. What is the main purpose of loss of use coverage, coverage D, in a homeowner's policy? A. To pay for damages to the dwelling if it is uninhabitable. B. To cover the cost of a temporary rental car if the insured's vehicle is damaged. C. To reimburse the insured for additional living expenses and lost rental income if the home becomes uninhabitable due to a covered peril. D. To provide coverage for property removed from the premises to protect it from a covered loss. Answer: C. To reimburse the insured for additional living expenses and lost rental income if the home becomes uninhabitable due to a covered peril. Loss of use coverage, or coverage D, provides financial protection if a covered peril makes the insured's home uninhabitable. It typically covers two main components: additional living expenses, ALE, which are increased costs like hotel stays or restaurant meals beyond normal living expenses, and fair rental value, FRV, which is lost rental income if a portion of the dwelling was rented out. This coverage ensures the insured can maintain their normal standard of living during displacement.